roll into that too.
Oh, Matt, I thought you'd like to hear that. I heard that you are absolutely necessary for our podcast because you're the only reason that makes it not dry. So congratulations
Oh, really?
on your accolade.
Matt's,
Oh, really?
Matt's the lube. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'll talk about your job prospects. You drinking anything this morning, Matt?
Drinking a Monster Energy can.
Okay.
This early? You're crazy, man.
I'm very
I
tired.
guess it's the same as coffee.
Yeah, it is. It's my coffee.
It's kind of
I
coffee.
am pretty bad about it. I drink like these things like 2-3 times a day. Probably not the best for me.
Yeah. So, how's your job prospects going, Matt?
Not too well so far. So I've been having difficulties. I found that there was a few places I wanted to apply for, but actually I couldn't because we in Singapore, everyone uses this app called the SingPass, Singapore Pass. And basically it has all your credentials on there. It even has like your academics and college levels and high school level classes on there. And that's what they use for everything here to access like your companies, when you go to the hospital, you use your SingPass, you use it for everything. But I needed to apply for jobs here, and they know automatically that I'm a long-term resident pass, which is like usually people who are just planning to stay here in Singapore for a short term, or they're in transition to get a permanent to be a permanent resident here. So automatically I'm disqualified from a lot of jobs here.
Oh, wow. Is it because like there's extra taxes for hiring a foreigner or something like that? Or
I think there's enough. I think there's fees and not penalties, but there's like they have to go through a lot more paperwork and hoops in order to hire on people who have my kind of pass.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I can't even log into the website.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah, they're like, yep, no.
So what's the plan?
So right now I'm using LinkedIn.
Okay.
And there's some jobs they don't have to use that kind of process. So I'm just using I forgot what they have. Like there's like easy access pass on LinkedIn where you can just like there's one button apply to a lot of jobs. So I've just been kind of spamming that. And I've applied. I did get a chance to get an interview with one place, but the lady there kept skipping out on my interviews. So I was just like, okay, I guess this is not happening.
Yeah, that's a red flag.
Yeah, big red flag.
Are you also looking like remote jobs in the States?
I'm about to start looking. Yeah. There are some remote jobs when it comes to it because I'm trying to teach English on either online or in person. So there are some remote jobs, but then you're battling with the time zone differences.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because it's 12 hours, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's when I have to deal with that, but I think it'll be okay. I think I'm just gonna move myself to the storage room so I don't bother anyone. Because
So
right
you
now
can't-
like, what's that?
You can't go to Malaysia and like tutor some rich family's kid on
That's what
English?
some people used to do.
Yeah.
But because of COVID, that's a bit more difficult to do.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And then
So
I'll be
what
like
about-
an hour plus commute.
What about a Chinese prospect? I know they kind of shut your company that you were working with down, but do they not have like other positions that you can go after?
They completely banned all foreigners from teaching in China.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it's actually
insane.
illegal.
Huh.
So even the parents can get in legal trouble if they even hire someone who's local. Like so say that I was living in China,
Hmm.
we would both get arrested
So
or heavily fined.
what if you did something like an interpreter for Chinese companies?
If I knew Chinese, I would definitely do that.
Oh yeah.
I think that part might be.
Right.
I am working on it though.
Okay. You
Very
still trying to
slowly.
stick with the English teaching career?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like teaching English is like definitely my career path for me. I don't know, for whatever reason, I feel like an affinity for it, even though before I never really had a passion for English in general as a first language speaker. But I think it's easier for me to like teach English to people who are trying to learn it, and that I think it's easier to see progress on a day-to-day level when someone is like couldn't pronounce a certain word, but now all of a sudden like now it's easy for them. So yeah, but the problem is I want to teach English as a second language, but in Singapore, English is a first language.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah,
speaks
that could
English
be a
here.
problem.
So
It's
not
gonna be
not
cool to tutor kids, but yeah.
yeah. So not too big of a market here.
Mhm.
So
But it's actually more of a market to learn Chinese.
did you finish your bachelor's degree, Matt?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So could you not go and teach grade school in Singapore if you went and got a certification?
I would have to get a degree here. A lot of the requirements here is to have early education degrees here. So I
Yeah.
only have psychology, but I've been applying for them anyway, just to see what would happen. But I haven't heard back.
I was just wondering if that would just put you to what through 2 years to maybe get the childhood education degree.
Yeah, me and Joyce were talking about it, my wife, and then we basically said that like we're probably gonna have to do it eventually. So we're looking into it. In the
Hmm.
meantime, right now I'm actually signing up for a CELTA course. I forgot what it stands for.
Yeah, I was about to say, what's that? It sounds like a bad cell phone company.
Yeah. So basically, in the teaching English as a second language world, the whole market is unregulated when it comes to certifications. So there's like some teaching certificates that you can just buy online, never take a class or anything. You just pay $15.
Oh, degree mill.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you're certified to teach English.
Yeah. I'm an
You pay
ordained
15
minister.
bucks. What's that?
I'm an ordained minister
Oh yeah.
because of a .com. So okay, so are you like dead set on teaching language, or are you just looking to teach?
I am pretty dead set on teaching English as a second language.
Yeah,
If not,
okay.
then teach English as a general class.
Okay, I was going to say, this engineering boot camp that I'm attending, they hire remote teachers, and you don't have to be like an expert engineer. Just know a little bit of basic coding, and they give you a curriculum, and you teach students remotely. I mean, I know that time zone would be a little bit tough on you, but those are some teaching opportunities as well. But if you're stuck with language, then that's not really kind of in your.
No, it's something I'm looking
wheelhouse.
into, like, because I am looking for like short-term job opportunities. Because right now I'm even applying to jobs for autism therapy for clients,
Okay.
because that's what I used to do in the States.
Okay.
So that's also something I'm looking into. And I did apply to one or two like robotics companies, or not robotics companies. They're tuition classes where they teach kids, how to program robots and do basic coding things.
Interesting.
And for that one, you didn't need coding experience. So
Yeah, I do know that boot camps are on fire right now. So they're always like on a shortage of instructors. So what they tend to do is they hire their new grads, and it's full remote work. But at the same time, there are also people who aren't grads that are working as like an early stage teacher's assistant, and they still make 20 something bucks an hour, which is not bad for a remote position that has no experience, right?
Right.
In coding. But yeah, speaking of autistic people, yeah, I'm gonna kind of transition real quick. You guys ever notice like people who are into a hobby who is so passionate about something, like how Matt is passionate about language, that they're a little bit mentally ill? You ever notice that? Like, Andy, you can relate. You like watches, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely made stupid detours for watches.
Yeah, I think watch collectors, for example, can be pretty mentally ill, because if you ever stick around like the forums and the groups on Reddit and the subreddits for watch collectors, and they call watches that are $2,000, $3,000, or $4,000 entry level, yeah, I was like, man, you're dumb. And then they'll complain about buying a bespoke strap for the watch that costs more than $50. So what are you guys into that, like, Matt, what about you as a language teacher? Do you are you around other expat who teach us English and they carry this ego around with them that just absolutely makes no sense, and you kind of think they're a little retarded?
At least
Mentally
with
ill. I'm sorry, mentally
not
ill.
not locally here, but
Yeah, this is the
I-
time to be correct. All right, cool.
I definitely when I was because my previous company VIP Kid, they definitely tried to sell the company to the employees in a sense of the loyalty, like a sense of loyalty, like the workshops and stuff. And I was on Reddit, and actually on Reddit, the people were more cynical there, like, oh, I hate this company, this sucks. But I went to a online remote convention, and the people there were just fanatical about VIP Kid, like teaching at the company. Like, oh yeah, Sydney, the CEO, we love you. Oh my God, you're changing the world one student at a time. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Oh, wow. It's like a cult.
Sounds like a
Yeah,
marketing
yeah.
agency is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the teachers that like gave the company a bad name when it comes to like people who were looking to work there, because people would think it was like MLMs, and it's not. But and then like they had some professor come on there to talk about what learning a language is like for kids, and like, oh my God, professor, I love all your work, I love all your research articles, and
How much you got to
I've read
pay
all
for
your
that?
books." What's that?
How much you got to pay for those articles?
I don't know, man. I was just like, this guy is just like, he's not that great. He's okay.
Now, what about, do you run into other expats who teach English in, Singapore and when you were in Korea and all that and these other places?
I haven't
anybody?
had a chance to really talk to expats here. They tend to congregate in a part of Singapore, in a neighborhood called like around Clarke Quay area. And they all tend to be like very high ranking positions, not so much of teaching English.
Now, Andy, if I was any good at networking and I was an expat, I probably would go hang out with the expats and find some leads, but that's
You mean the
me.
ones that are pretty high ranking that know a lot of people? Those,
Right.
Those
Right.
kinds of people.
Those people?
Oh,
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
I
Just
don't
sit down on
know.
it.
I mean, they would have a lot of connections, so I'm not sure if they'd be able to they might know somebody that
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I kind of get it.
It sounds, I think it's more sensible to press one button and send out 100 applications to 100 different
Yeah.
places over
Yeah,
talking to
but
other expats.
When I press one button, I don't have to put on the foundation, the eyeliner. It's
Yeah.
just the whole 9 yards.
Yeah,
It's just
you-
a lot easier if I can
Yeah,
go on the
it's
computer.
much easier to press a button.
You just got to compete with what, hundreds of thousands of other Singaporeans. And when you go meet up with expats, you only got to compete with expats.
Yeah.
Jeez, man. So,
But
how
when it
was
comes to the English education world, when it comes to expats, it's actually the community is not that big here.
no,
But
but
I was hoping to take a CELTA course here. I forgot the acronym for it already. But CELTA is one of the most stringent certificates when it comes to teaching English, and it's from the British Council. So I was hoping to go to physical classes next month.
Well, I mean, what does the education do for you though? Like, is it automatic job placement? Because if it's not automatic job placement,
Yeah.
it is automatic.
They don't
job
have
placement?
automatic job placement, but they do help you
How?
because they're tied with the local community. Like they have connections.
I mean,
to-
every college can say that, right?
yeah, law school job placements are great when they start working at McDonald's,
yeah.
especially
Like-
since McDonald's is paying $20 an hour these days.
I don't know. I
I was going to say they rejected me.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
Because I'm
there-
not a permanent resident.
are there like local well, not even local, but are there like associations for ESOL for people to like talk to each other and discuss I guess teaching tactics?
so wait, before Matt answers that. Now, I've never been to Singapore, but I bet I know where some people congregate that
course.
they would know. It's like this area in Singapore where a bunch of expat like gets together that Matt's never been to. They would
Yeah.
probably know. Just
Yeah.
say,
Probably.
yeah.
Probably.
Talking about that little mental.
Or they would know somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah, right.
There is a Canadian international school right next to me too.
I mean, at least you get a hearty apology.
Yeah.
So your degree was in psychology, right? Have you thought
Right.
about going to the embassy and trying to get a job there? Is that something that?
Um, if you I looked into embassy before all of this, but in general, if you want to work at an embassy, it's kind of like joining the military,
Mhm.
where you go through this whole process of getting applied and then getting accepted, and then wherever they need you, they'll put you at.
Oh, I thought
So
GS
so
grades.
there's no guarantee I'll stay in Singapore.
I thought GS grades were usually kind of stay put, right? You're GS, right, Andy?
I'm a GS. It's I wouldn't say stay put. Like GS is just a schedule of pay based off
Yeah.
of like
Well, no, I just figured most
reality.
guys who are on the GS schedule pay, which are I guess civilians, are kind of most of them are stay put unless you're a contractor.
I
But
think
you want to be a
I would
embassy
GS.
I would say
workers is a
most
bit.
of them are stay put. There's no GS contractors, like
Oh yeah,
contractors
and
aren't
that
on
makes
the
sense.
GS system.
Yep.
It's only federal
Yep.
employees, but yeah, they like I would say most of them are stay put. They stay in their area, or if they travel, they do mostly domestic. But like especially if you're a military wife, military spouse, you can be anywhere in the world and work remotely on a GS pay.
With embassy workers, it's a bit different. They serve like 3 or 4 years duties, I guess you can
I
call
don't
it.
think embassy workers are GS though.
Yeah, they are. I don't know if they're GS, but
Yeah,
they do
they're
have a
federal
pay scale.
employees, but I don't think they're on the GS schedule.
They have a different pay scale.
Yeah, they have a different. They have their own pay scale. Yeah,
Yeah,
Mm.
they
I
have their own
think.
pay
I
scale.
think.
Because it is
Mm.
something I've looked into seriously when I was in the military, when I was coming out. When I was like, what were you gonna say?
No. I was gonna say, what about like an American travel agency in Singapore? Well, you
I
know,
don't think many people want to travel to the States right now.
Rich.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean,
I
we
know.
still have a like thriving
Oh, we
tourism in
definitely do.
DC, so
Yeah.
somebody's coming here.
Yeah.
Yeah. In general, I mean, that's something I definitely don't want to do. But Singaporeans are not. Usually, they travel all the time. That's like part of the culture because Singapore is so small. It takes like I can bike around Singapore within an hour. It's really that small.
Speaking of around Singapore, you haven't even talked about Lunar New Year's in Singapore, man, because I want to know what that was like.
Yeah.
Oh man, so eventful.
Well, I mean, it's COVID, right? So they probably stayed in.
Yeah. We go visit a lot of people's houses, the family's houses, and you eat a lot of snacks and food, and gain a lot of calories, kind of similar to how it is for Christmas for us or Thanksgiving. And then but because of COVID and everything like that, we kind of stayed home. And then Riley was sick during that time too.
Hmm.
So
I was gonna say I
So-
saw some. Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, I saw some videos from Singapore for the recent Lunar New Year. It was pretty crowded. Looked like a lot of fun too.
Just like people hanging out. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and like all of the lion dance and all that stuff that was going on.
Yeah, I never been to it. I think Joyce's family are not into this kind of thing, so we tend not
Oh.
to go to like big gatherings too much
Huh.
in the first place. We just recently started doing it. That's because I'm a tourist here in a way, so they've been trying to show me different things, and like every time we go out and do these kind of things, like, oh, this is the first time we've done this too. We did it our whole lives. But yeah, we did like in Singapore specifically, they do a thing where they toss a salad, and there's like a whole ceremony to it.
Mhm.
So like they add like different ingredients to the salad, and you have to like chant like a mantra, but it's like a fun mantra. I forgot. It's all in Mandarin, so I don't know. I don't understand any of it. But it's basically all about good luck and good fortune, and then all of us together as a family, we just like toss it up in there, just make a huge mess everywhere.
That
salad
sounds like a lot of fun
So-
afterwards.
Normal people make New Year's resolutions for New Year's. Matt tosses salads.
with the family.
How's your running going, both of you guys?
You want me to
Jesus.
start? I can start. So I recently moved. It's a new background, and so I've been doing nothing but like treadmill runs and like staying out of this cold weather outside. But I brought it down to like maybe once a week. I'm trying to up it back up to like 4 to 6 times a week. But yeah, I'm trying to actually get stuff in order. So until I want to say like middle of last week. If you were on our treadmill and you jumped too high, your head would like hit the top of the air duct. So yeah, I had to move it. But yeah, no, that's kind of where my running is right now. It's kind of mostly on a back burner. I'm still slow as crap. I wish I was at my 2020 times, but I'm working my way back there. And I got to find my watch. Actually, I know where my watch is. I got to find the suitcase that my watch is in.
You guys moved from an apartment to a house. You don't have that much shit.
It was a townhome, and that townhome didn't have all of our stuff out of the boxes that we brought it to. So we still had Steph and I had stuff in boxes when we moved in together that are just now being unpacked.
Huh. I've been
They've been in
From
boxes for
that
like
long ago.
6 years.
Oh wow.
We bought this house 8 years ago. I still have a corner full of boxes that still haven't been unpacked from the last house. What about you, man?
At what point do you decide to just throw it away and you're just like, I don't know what's in there, just gone.
I've been trying, man, but Cynthia just wants to keep them. She's like, we're gonna need them one day. I don't even know what's in those boxes.
just like auction them off. Be like, I don't know what's in here, but
Just
highest
box.
bidder, you can have the whole
Yeah.
box.
No kidding. No kidding. She's like, you might need it one day. I'm like, no, I don't. What about you, Matt? How's your running?
Not too bad. Well, it could be better. I'm like Andy, I'm just running like once a week now. And I for a while I wasn't running for about a month or two. Mainly because of laziness, but there was like some life circumstances that kind of stopped me for a bit or gave me excuses at least. But now I have no excuse at all because Riley's going to daycare. So she's going to school all day. And so now I'm trying to find time to do that. And then
I thought you said that last time.
What in the world?
I thought you said that last month, Matt.
2 weeks ago.
When did
2 weeks
Riley?
ago.
When Riley started
Beginning
going
of
to daycare?
January, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Because we talked about how she was doing on her first few days of daycare.
Because Matt literally said this last time. He said,
Yeah.
I don't have any
Yeah,
more
but-
excuses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then last week during the podcast, I think you were like, yeah, so I'm going to actually start going hardcore, probably like every day, every other day. And I'm going to do it because, she's going to daycare now, so it's easy.
Yeah. This week she was not in daycare though.
Oh,
Yeah. it's
so
quite
the
easy.
3 weeks before that, though.
Yeah. Laziness.
Man.
But I did run a few days ago, at least. I was pretty proud of the run. And the run previous to that, like 3 weeks ago, that was my longest run that I've done. So I was happy with that.
Yeah. Well,
What about you, Tin? How was your runs lately?
just inside, man. It's been so cold here that
Mhm.
usually where I run, the boardwalk would just freeze over. I ran it once when it was frozen. And instead of having that forward motion, I kind of had that upward motion so that I won't slip forward and bust my ass. Right. So I started running in treadmill and kind of start to do a consistent 4 to 5 incline for about 20 minutes at about, anywhere between a 12 to 15-minute pace. Just try to get myself ready for like a trail run again. So I'm hoping once it gets warmer, I'll start hitting the trails again with more elevation. And we'll see. But I'm running 4, 5, 6 days a week. So still doing it. Just a lot less in distance,
Yeah.
and I have this really bad habit, right? So I start at my cut, where I'm reducing my caloric intake, but I'm going to do it a lot slower this time. Remember when so I guess this was right before COVID. When I first started running with you guys back in April of 2019, I was about
Mhm.
210 pounds. By the fall, when I was running Mystery Mountain, I was about 165 pounds. So
Yeah.
that was rough. So trying to keep up with my caloric intake and do a slow cut right now is tough. And cutting in the dead middle of winter sucks too because it gets really cold. But comes April, so I'm done with this boot camp on March 11th, and Aiden is going to go to UGA for an all-state tournament for his engineering club, and then
cool.
when he comes back, Phoenix goes to Disney World with her group, so I can't even go on a vacation till April, right? So we're gonna go down to the beach in April, and hopefully, I won't be a tub of lard anymore. So
Oh man. Last time I went to a beach, go for a run on the actual sand. You'll hate yourself for like 3 days.
Oh yeah. So we do this thing called questing down in Pensacola. And there are areas of Pensacola where you're walking in the sand and you kind of sink knee deep into the sand. And it sucks. It's terrible for your back. And we were walking one day and I missed our entrance, our boardwalk. So we walked an additional mile in this really, soft sand. And man, the kids were angry. But at the end of it, we found a jellyfish net and we kind of saw that somebody left it behind. So we claimed it as a quest item. So these days, when we go down to the beach, we go questing. Um, yeah, so that's
Cool
that's
though. I
something
like
else.
that.
Yeah, man. So how you enjoying the new house, Andy?
I love it. I'd show you around, but it's literally just a bunch of cardboard boxes right now. But no, I like it a lot. We're in a nice neighborhood. It's quiet. I have windows everywhere. This is my office too, so it's just much nicer. You can probably hear a slight echo because we're still getting furniture everywhere.
So
But yeah.
speaking of your house, okay. I don't know if our listeners know, but you have a real estate background, not just like any real estate background. You grew up in a family with probably the largest real estate firm in Hinesville, right in the southeast.
Arguably, yeah.
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 So, how does somebody like that end up buying a house with a basement that has a wall that's curved?
Wherein the owners don't divulge that information to you and the inspectors never check. So the basement wall was curved, and it's actually, there was a wall in front of the curved wall. So we had the foundation wall, and then somebody built a wooden structure in front of the foundation wall, and then they put paneling and sheetrock over it so they hide it. So when the inspectors came, they never looked behind there. And then as soon as I came here, I saw the paneling. I'm like, that's ugly. So literally the day after we bought it, I just ripped down the paneling and I look at this wall and I'm like, well, shit.
Did you show Matt the picture?
Have I shown? I don't think I've shown. I know, yeah, I put it in our group chat.
This isn't like did you see it, Matt? It was a
Maybe
long
not.
time
I don't
ago.
think
It
so.
was
Yeah.
quite several weeks ago, but it so it's not just any curve, right? So you know what a pot-bellied guy looks like, right? The Ralph Carmen or whatever stomach it is that they call it. That's what his wall looks like. Yeah, you're thinking. It looks like a pot-bellied dad. It's
Oh,
kind of
no.
weird. But I guess it's safe, Andy. Did you guys get an engineer out there?
So yeah, I ended up getting a structural engineer to come out and take a look at everything because I was very concerned.
It's after
hang
you
on,
already
I got a
bought it?
picture. Oh, sorry.
Oh wow.
You see the gaps at the top of the
Yeah, see,
wooden
that's
beams,
the
right?
top, and then
Oh,
the bottom.
But yeah, it
So you can see
bulges
the
out.
curve.
oh, I see
Yeah.
it now. Yeah.
It's massive. So the gap at the top is roughly like 6 to 7 inches. Like it's massive. But I got a structural engineer to come out and he wrote up an entire report basically saying like, hey, there's nothing that you need to fix. Everything's fine. And then he mentioned the drainage that we have going to the backyard. He mentioned like, if we wanted to, we can do the expensive fix of removing all the soil and putting in new soil. What happened that he thought was the soil was retaining water and pressing against the wall. But he verbally told me that what we're seeing, that wall is actually brick underneath it. They must have put straps down on the brick and then covered it in cement. So it makes this bulge much bigger than it actually is. But the entire idea is that now it's braced and the house is fine.
Oh, okay. Just looks.
But yeah, no, it's crazy that of all the houses that we could have got, it was the one with a buckled foundation wall that nobody divulged to us at any point in the process.
So that paneling must have been put up there really janky for you to be able to just rip it off like that.
Oh no, I bought tools. I had the whole, yeah, no, I bought a nice freaking little crowbar. Not little, no, it's a 4-foot crowbar, but like flat edge, and I had to go at it. The paneling itself was old, so the paneling was probably up for, I don't know, 15 years, because it came out, and I just when I saw behind there, I was like, oh no. And if you take a closer look at the picture I sent, the wall itself was built to be kind of against it. So there's 2x4s. The entire frame is made of 2x4s, but the wall, since it bends in, you can see that they split the 2x4 like in half in order to fit into the frame. So it's like whoever did it did a pretty poor job of the wall. Thankfully, the foundation, the frame itself doesn't support any weight. But yeah, no, it was a crappily done job to get that wall. It's probably because the fix for the foundation wall itself was probably 20 to 30 grand.
Jeez, that's
Yeah.
that's rough. I mean, it's a beautiful house, you know.
I love it. It's still standing. Knock on wood.
Yeah, well, you
Particle
know,
board, but there's wood somewhere.
yours is still standing. Mine almost fell down. So, you know, I had I don't know if I told you about this, Matt, but so when the guy who built my house, I'm the second owner of the house. The guy who built my house used these 4x6 stringers that goes across the second floor of my house. And when he ran the wires through these, I'm sorry, they're 2x6s, 2x6s. He, instead of putting like a 1-inch hole that's all he needed to run the wires, he drilled a 4-inch hole with a hole saw in each one of these beams to run the wires through. So, you know, you have these 2x6s that are supposed to be supporting the second floor now are pretty much 2x2s, right? Because there's a 4-inch hole right in the middle of each one of these beams. And it wasn't a big deal because while they were living here, their daughters never took any baths. Phoenix loves taking baths. And if you know anything about the weight of water, a gallon of water is approximately 8 pounds, right? So when you're filling that tub up with water, it start pushing down on those beams and it start to drop my second floor lower and lower every single year. And it got to the point where our drywalls, our ceilings, and everything was cracking, and we were able to go outside and look at the roof, and you could see the roof was coming down with it
Jeez.
too. So we managed to get some 2x10s in there and reinforce that entire floor and jacked it back up. And our kitchen ceiling now doesn't have that stupid 80s popcorn ceiling anymore. It's got a much more modern ceiling. So which, by the way, I got to show you guys pictures of my kids remodeled rooms. They look fantastic. Aiden's room looks like a real recording studio after what we
Oh,
did.
nice.
Nice.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's pretty neat. Yeah, so speaking of houses, man, so your brother and sister are going to be guests with us in the near future, right?
Yeah. In the next within the next month or two, like when I get their schedules, they've got like some vacations and business meetings set up. So I'm waiting for them to give me a date. But yeah, I think they're gonna come on and we'll probably do a bit of a chat on either housing in general or gaming. I come from a big gaming family, so we might talk about that. I'm going to kind of let them figure out the topic points they want, and then we can have some fun with them as probably our first guest on this show.
I don't want to get too much into housing until they get here, but I kind of want to talk about this with you guys since we all have kids. Mine are obviously a lot older than both of yours, and do you fear, and I know you guys probably won't have this problem, Matt, you live in different countries, so it might be a little bit different, but a lot of kids today and a lot of younger people, young adults today, can't see themselves ever becoming homeowners because of the huge lack of pay that they're getting in comparison to what they invest into college or whatever else it is. And blue collar jobs are practically non-existent in both of our countries at this point. What do you think about that, Annie? You think we're going to have a pretty rough time within the next 50 years because of this?
The rhetoric itself isn't new. Like this isn't our generation kind of thing. Like you can go back in history and like every time a large portion of the generation gets past a certain area, minus the baby boomers, they have their own like coddling that the government has done. But outside of them, like every generation has come to this point. Like when the majority of them reaches a certain man, I want to use that phrase from like our first episode when we talk about when you hit these milestones in your life,
rites of passage.
rites of passage.
Yeah.
When the generations get to those rites of passage, like all of a sudden it becomes like the forefront of the issues. Like now we're kind of seeing the housing issues, especially with millennials. We're like, there's so many of us not going to be able to purchase houses. But that's true with every generation. Like majority of people don't own capital. Capital itself is owned by like 15% of the population. So, I mean, flip that around. There is 85% of people who don't own capital, and they never will. And by capital, I mean stuff like real estate and stocks and things like that. So when people are talking about how our generation isn't buying houses, that's true for every generation. Not a lot of people do own these things. So
Well-
I don't think it changes anything.
Let's talk about the baby boomers because they were pretty coddled, right? You guys remember that show Married with Children?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Never did we think it was absurd that a stupid shoe salesman could own a home that large and raise his family. But the reality of it is that they were able to back then, right? I remember when my parents bought and built their house. I was like, wow, that's a lot of money for this house. Man, if you spent $200,000 in Atlanta, you might get a 1-bedroom apartment. It might. And that's a hard might. Whereas they were able to buy a brand new 4-bedroom home in a pretty good piece of property in Savannah with that money. And now you drive around Savannah, I don't think it's really easy to find homes for that price anymore either. Definitely can't do it up here. Up here, I think you have to do probably a minimum of about $400,000 just to get inside a entry level family size ranch.
Yeah, I'm sitting here going, wow, 400 for a nice entry level house sounds amazing. Like here, you'd have to, you're starting at 800 grand to actually get a single family home.
Yeah, it's
Really?
To
crazy.
get a small single family, like 1,800 square feet single family home.
Yeah, well, so now we're talking about Atlanta, metropolitan Atlanta.
Yeah.
That's different, right? Whereas when you're in the suburbs, 400,000. When we first moved up here, you could still buy a house for around the 200, 225. That was 10, 11, 12, 10 years ago, right? You could still buy it for $200,000. You can't find that anymore up here. It's just impossible. And the salaries haven't gone up here. So that's the other thing is that that it's out of proportion there. So I don't know if these kids are going to have a problem buying homes. I know that at least my kids will pass our home down to them, but I don't think they're going to have a problem buying a home because we're preparing them pretty well for life.
So you're touching on a breaking point that I actually think is coming, and I think housing is a tertiary product of it. But I think the bigger problem is income itself. Like just looking at the generations that are currently alive, like baby boomers, what they were making at our age was actually enough to like afford a home, afford rent, afford everything, and not need a second income.
Mhm.
Versus what we make is almost, I'm trying to remember the actual statistic. I wish I still had it up, but it's almost a third of what they make when you adjust for cost of living. And as all of us are aware, like when the pandemic happened, we had this huge jump in inflation. Like we're talking 7 to 8% since it started, but everybody's income hasn't gone up more than 1 to 2%. So everybody in 2022 who hasn't changed jobs or had a nice bump up in their income is making less money than they were in 2019. Unless they got a pay raise of over 8 to 9%, they're actually making less money.
Yeah.
And that to me is the breaking point. It's like as cost of living increases and income stays the same, like you just won't be able to live, not much less be able to afford a house. And I think that's what kind of separates, I guess, our kids from the baby boomers, because when baby boomers were having their children, they didn't see this as a problem. They saw a small separation and like, well, it'll catch up eventually as people give raises. For us, we know we're going to have to fix this system or our kids are just not going to be able to eat.
Yeah, it's not just eating, it's retirement too, right?
Yeah.
And we say our kids, I think our kids would be fine. I think it's just the general population who are struggling as young adults now. Their kids probably won't have a chance. I was kind of at the whole entire precipice of seeing housing becoming more unaffordable as the days progress, because when we first moved out and we were both working full time, we could afford our own rent. We were able to afford a really nice home that we could rent in Savannah. But right afterwards, man, as soon as we moved to Atlanta, rent exploded. You can't. What we pay in a mortgage for 4 acres right now, you can't rent a 1 bedroom apartment here in Metro Atlanta for our mortgage price. It's insane. It's insane. And you think about a 1 bedroom, people are looking for 1 bedrooms for $1,200-1,300 here in Metro Atlanta, and you got to find a roommate to share that 1 bedroom. I don't know, man. We might move to that whole entire model that the Koreans and the people in Hong Kong use. Those little tiny ass. What are they called?
Oh, I don't know. I was just saying, just build up. Like you build up
Yeah,
and you give
right.
everybody little shanties inside
Right.
of a mega condo.
Right, like the walled city back in
Yeah.
like
in
way
China.
back when. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's rough, man. What about you, Matt? Being with like family, I know you and Joyce are going to have your own place in the next couple of years. Is that something that you're going to be able to pass down to your kids? And it's weird, by the way, talking about passing homes down to kids.
So that is a
Yeah.
question up in the air because in Singapore, they have a regulation or a law in place where a building can only be a residential area can only be built up and stay there for 100 years. So say, for example, a bit like this apartment complex, for example, that we're living in right now. Say that it was 80 years old. In 20 years, this place is going to be demolished, no matter what we want. But because Singapore is such a new country, we haven't had that in effect yet. So everyone's kind of curious as what's going to happen and if people are going to get really upset by it. And it
How
really
old is
affects,
Singapore?
like, what's that?
How old is Singapore
Around 50
as a country?
years.
50 years?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a very new country. And they just recently, within the last 20, 30 years plus, maybe I could be wrong, I'm getting in trouble. But in the last 20, 30 years is when they really fully like started to develop into, a modernized, I don't know how to say modernized country, but yeah, up to the level of the same as like the States and the West and everything. Anyway, but yeah, but it's very difficult to buy a house here. Usually like if you want to buy a house with your family or your wife, you have to bid for a place and you won't get a place for the next 3-5 years. So you have to wait. So right now we got accepted for get to buy an apartment for about 500 grand. And it's just 2-3 bedrooms. And it's very small, relatively small compared to the States. But now we have to wait 3.5 years just to move in.
Easy.
Yeah.
As often as we've talked about the living situation in Singapore on this podcast, what does the homelessness look like in Singapore? Is that a thing?
Is that
Officially,
something they
no.
actually track? Do they keep statistics for that?
I'm not sure if they keep the statistics on it too much, but when I travel around Singapore, I never see homeless people, at least not obvious homeless people. But when I have gone out for my runs at like late at night, I start to see them now.
So I think there are two kinds of homeless people, right? So the one are the ones that you're talking about, where we kind of see them as usually they're out in the streets because they're mentally ill or they're drug addicts or something else that's caused them to live in that manner. But then there's also the other people who kind of assimilate with society like the rest of us, and they work in the service industry or in whatever other type of industry, but they're living out of their car or they're hopping from couch to couch. That's homelessness too, right? And in the United States there are a lot of those people and we just don't see that. because they don't live in those tents that you see in.
We have a ton of homeless shelters, so if
Yeah.
they know where to get that access, then they'll sleep there tonight if they can get a bed.
Yeah, and I imagine that kids these days, we're starting to see them move towards this faux glam life that people have romanticized, like the van life and the small house living and all that. And they've all kind of come to the acceptance that they can't be true homeowners as the American dream had set it out to be. So they'll just live in these little tiny places. But technically, it's kind of homelessness in a degree. Maybe not the tiny homes, but living out of your van kind of is, right? Do you have that in Singapore?
I think the difference in Singapore is that there's much more family support here, and it's much more of it's not normal to pick out family members that you have issues with. So if they are mentally ill and stuff like that, or there's a lot of drama with them, no matter what, you will keep that family in your house, or you try to take care of them as much as possible. And when one of my family members, he was telling me that like when you do see homeless people, it's usually because the family tends to kick them out, and they're not seeking shelter because they just don't want it. But I just don't see it. At least I don't see it visibly outside too often. But I do think what is interesting here in Singapore is that you actually have to get a pass from the government in order to beg for money. So like if
do you have to pay for that? Do you have to pay for a pass?
I'm not sure how that works. So we have been begged for money once or twice since I've been here. And when they do, they show you their paperwork. Say, hey, I've been authorized by the Singaporean government that I can actually beg you for money. Can you give me some?
Yeah, okay. Here's maybe a kind of a cool, maybe a boring nexus. What are some genuine concerns that you and Joyce and people around Singapore have for your next generations?
Definitely the job market and housing.
I don't want to move just yet. I want to look this up because I was curious about homelessness in Singapore, because I was just curious because you kind of made it sound like sunshine and rainbows to an extent.
Sure did, didn't he?
So this is from the Singapore government and how they're addressing homelessness in Singapore. They're saying like the top 3 things are like, and these phrases I assume mean something different, but ignorant inequality is something that they're trying to address. Simplistic stereotypes. Again, these phrases they don't come immediately understood to me. And then meritocratic mobility. Is there something with the public transport that there was a merit system in order to use it?
Nothing I'm familiar with.
Sorry, you were away from the mic. What was that?
As not that I'm familiar with. No.
Huh. Okay. Sorry. This was just weird. And then like there's a I guess some kind of act called the Destitute Persons Act that they're trying to pass for it. It was passed in 1989. Okay. I don't know. I just thought this was interesting because like this was the top 3 things, and I'm like, what does this mean?
Right. I guess I'm just comparing it to say like Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I used to live.
Yeah.
Where homelessness was very obvious and very much an issue there. Like it was everywhere. and I was always begged for money wherever I went.
Okay. No, that's fair. I think people beg for money more in metro areas than outside of metro areas.
I do live in a very out of the way area of Singapore.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you. I didn't know if you lived in like downtown proper, or close to downtown, or a busy place.
I kind of live like, I guess you would call it the suburbs here.
Suburbs, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Singapore is kind of just like one big city, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
yeah. That's like, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, it's mostly older folks that live here.
Okay.
In this area, you don't see young people too often, or young families. So me and Joyce are even more of an oddity in that sense.
So Singapore has these things called welfare homes.
Welfare camps?
No, welfare homes. They're basically apartment complexes for people who are basically would otherwise be homeless.
Huh.
Oh, interesting.
That's neat. I
Yeah.
think is it Michigan or Wisconsin that did something like that? They built homes for the homeless people.
I don't know about Wisconsin. Yeah.
Maybe it was Michigan.
So there's a Destitute Persons Act in Singapore.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at that 1999 or something.
89.
Interesting.
1989.
So speaking of welfare homes, or at least Destitute Person Acts, you guys remember that area in Savannah down on Pennsylvania Avenue and President Street called the Savannah Gardens? Used to
Oh,
be
yeah.
some really crummy apartments there. And then they knocked them all down, and the city council decided to build these beautiful homes and
Is
condos
this
and
north
townhomes.
of River Street?
So it is you guys remember Skidaway Road?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And you could take Skidaway Road all the way down to President Street. It turns into a road called
I don't know where President Street is.
So not that you remembered, but for your bachelor party, Phoenix and I went to a seafood store down in that corner. We thought we were about to get mugged and killed. But
Oh, where you guys picked up the crabs. No, I looked
yeah.
that place up afterwards. You told me about it. Yeah.
So
I know what you're talking about now.
that place used to be where Savannah High School is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that place used to have like, I grew up in that area. Actually, when my family immigrated to the United States, that's where the Catholic diocese put them, and they used to be really crummy apartments. So the city council decided to knock them all down, spend a ton of money, make really beautiful homes, and put these people in these homes for very low cost to free. They destroyed them, man.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So, what'd you expect? It's what's that saying? You can take them out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto out of them.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
that's
getting published.
yeah,
Wow.
it is getting published. But that's where I came from too, though. That's where I grew up, from age 0 to 5, and then my parents took me out of that apartment complex and neighborhood, moved us into not a much better one, but it was a lot better than that. But yeah, it's kind of weird looking at the welfare homes in Singapore. They look beautiful, actually. And then you go to the welfare homes in the United States, the Bronx and all these other places.
Yeah, Section 8 in general, like for even low income housing, it's rarely a pretty sight.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Some of that's by design though, because some of the corporates will take Section 8 housing, make them nice, and then know that they use cheap quality products and know that they won't increase it later, just so they can claim the depreciation on taxes, which is a huge tax benefit. So it's kind of by intention at the same time. But I guess it works both ways, especially if the government themselves are the ones that are creating the housing. That's when it gets super awkward that they're not restoring it properly.
Okay. All right. Let's do this. Let's kind of shift gears real quick and finish this episode up in the last 12 minutes with you guys kind of going into, I want to know what your concerns are for your kids' generation and those to come. Matt, you go first, because I wanted to look at the Singapore perspective, because as Annie had said, you kind of paint it as, rainbows and sunshine and all of that stuff. So,
well, I mean, I paint it as rainbows because that's how like people perceive Singapore in general. Like a lot of people there's people who complain about the government and stuff like that, but people are pretty happy in Singapore, in general. The main thing that they worry about in general is the job market and the housing. It's getting more and more difficult to find houses, and Singapore is having to get more and more involved with regulations when it comes to who can sell houses, who can buy houses, and how you do it, and the subsidies involved. And plus, as Singapore is a very tiny country, and the more and more people that are here, it's more difficult it is to find a job. So Joyce was lucky to find a job here because she had a friend that was able to help her out. But before that, she struggled to find something here. So that's something that I'm concerned about. But when it comes to specifically for my kids, I'm actually more concerned about social media and the effects of that, and just constantly having your life being focused on, and just the wrong thing you can say now, how it can affect you later on down in the future.
do you think Singapore is going to implement a social credit score?
No, not China. Not yet, at least.
What about China? Are you guys worried about China and what China could potentially do for your kids' future? Do
Yes.
to your kids' future?
Yes.
In Singapore or just in general?
Well, in Singapore first, because you guys are so damn close to them.
I don't know. I don't think they have eyes on us yet when it comes to any.
They
specific
do.
actions that-
Have you heard
Do
of
they?
TikTok?
Hmm?
TikTok,
Know
WeChat.
about it. Mhm.
Like China actually scrubs data. Like they can literally scrub the data off TikTok. Like they get location information on there. They get behavior information. Like privacy is a huge issue with TikTok, and I
Right.
just like the fact that we still even allow it or allow our kids to use it bothers the crap out of me. Mainly because they're being subjected to all this data loss, all this profiling on them at such a young age that by the time they become an adult, their decisions. Okay. And I mentioned this before. We talked about Target and we talked about how Target has enough a profile on you that they know at what age you're most likely going to have a kid. And they're accurate to like 80 to 90% of the degree. And they'll just send you a letter like, hey, here's a pregnancy kit. By the
had to
way,
make
we sell all
themselves-
these things.
They had to deliberately make themselves less accurate, right? Because otherwise, it was a bit. People were getting kind of.
I mean,
out.
yeah, but making yourself less accurate doesn't mean you don't have the data to be accurate. And that's
no,
the problem.
yeah.
So imagine like that you're talking about 25-year-olds getting this. And it's like, yeah, well, they're adults. They subjected themselves to that by entering it into Target. These kids who are 13 to 16 years old are coming onto TikTok and they're getting a profile. And by the time they turn 18, before they turn 18, they're already being subjected to this manipulation by ads.
Mhm.
This manipulation of however they want to be manipulated, and we're just letting it happen. So to that extent, like that kind of answers some of my question is this like this privacy aspect of things. Like I don't want my son's face anywhere. I don't want his fingerprint on anything. I don't want his digital fingerprint to exist until he says it exists. And that's going to be probably like after 16 if I have any say in it.
I feel the same way. That's why I personally don't try to post photos of Riley too much. And
Well, I
towards
think
the-
this is where we would probably change is that I'm not going to restrict him from going on the internet. It's just I'm going to restrict him from using his personal information.
Yeah.
Like at a young age, I'm going to explain to him what information is private, what's his, what belongs to him, and what if he gives up, he loses forever. Like your name, your social security number, and who you are three different things. Your name you give up every day. You just say who you are, and that's that. But the person that you are, so my name's Andrew Strickland. The person that Andrew Strickland is, that's private. That's me. That's mine. Nobody gets to take that away from me. As I'm talking on here, people can extrapolate information, but they only get to extrapolate information that I want them to have. Like, but at the same time, I'm well over 30. I have every intention to do this, and I've thought about everything I'm going to say before I say it. My son doesn't, especially at a young age. So I don't want him to be subjected to that. So I having that information and teaching him that early is kind of my intention. And that's his privacy now is a concern to me because he'll have that digital profile against him before he even gets to adolescence if I don't stop it. And then I guess since I'm already on it, the other two things that I'm very much worried about for him is what jobs are going to look like in the future, because I don't feel like the current educational system is equipped to handle what jobs are going to require in the future in terms of skill-based training. And two, I am concerned about adequacy of quality food, especially in the United States.
Yeah, also one of my worries too is in Singapore, the education system is actually fairly strict in comparison to the States. It's very stressful work environment or study environment here.
Yeah,
So
which is
they-
good and bad, right? Because I imagine that produces like really good numbers, but really poor students, really poor thinkers. Because when they're subjected to like, do this, do this, do this, the world becomes black and white, and they're really good at accomplishing tasks, but they're really bad at thinking outside those tasks. how to automate it, how to make it faster, how to make it better. Like, you can't teach somebody to be innovative by always telling them what to do.
Right. I think that's why a lot of like tuition schools and programs have been exploding in Singapore, because parents realize they won't get that kind of exploration at the normal public schools. So they will send them to like classes where like that's all job opportunities to be a drama teacher here. It's actually like a tuition class to teach drama here, because they don't get that. What's that?
Tuition-based education is, it can be pretty dangerous too, man. And we see that with the United States collegiate system, right? Is we've turned it into this money-making machine that so many colleges have popped up, and they'll accept just anybody into college. I remember when I was in high school, you had to send out applications and you had to wait to see if you were accepted into the school that you wanted to go to. And usually you weren't, unless if you were a top tier student. These days, as long as you had the money, as long as you had somebody to sign on that student loan for you, or you were able to get some type of state sponsored scholarship, you can go to college. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to be a gatekeeper to education, but I don't think everybody deserves a higher level education if they're just going to waste it away, right? Especially if
I
they're
don't even
going
think it's about deserving. I think it's whether or not it's a necessity. I don't think it's necessary to have a college education to do half the jobs that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think it's one of the strangest things that a lot of companies look for a college degree just to demonstrate that you have the commitment to finish something that long on a certain level of autonomy. And that's a really expensive commitment that people are looking for that may not even be relevant to what they're doing in the professional field. And I think anytime that you start that type of tuition based education, you start allowing private companies to open these type of schools and governments backing them and saying, hey, you know, yeah, go ahead, open up a shitty school, take however many kids you want, we'll sign for the loans for you, and our society doesn't really get anything of value from it, and we haven't. And you know,
That's
with
probably
my
why,
kids,
that's probably why I'm out of a job in China, actually.
well,
because
go
because in
ahead.
China, like the tuition system and all these private schools have become such an issue, because it's practically mandatory, at least it was in China, to go to these tuition schools and pay so much money to do all this. And this added a lot more stress to families monetarily and mentally, to where China just like cracked down. It's like, okay, no more, no more tuition schools. All tuition schools have to be nonprofit now, and no more foreign teachers in China.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And you know, what's really interesting is that I know a lot of people don't like China and the CCP, but with them closing down real estate investment, not allowing foreign buyers to buy real estate, not, you know, I guess what you just said, Matt, getting rid of tuition based education, getting rid of foreign teachers, and really becoming, I guess, in a sense, nationalized. Maybe they are protecting their future in a much better way than we are. At least I see it in the United States. Because if our generation, our next generations don't have money to buy the real estate that we have here, foreigners are all going to come in and buy it, right, as an investment, and all of our state capital is just going to leak out of the state. So, you know, I don't know. That's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's a fun conversation. Yeah, you just reminded me of a book that actually attacked that premise. So that's a fun conversation.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't think so. I don't think we've seen it before. I don't think we've ever given it an opportunity to be seen before, so we don't know, right? So now I guess we have 1 minute left. Are you not worried about the food situation, Matt, in Singapore? I know Andy's talking about quality food situation in the United States, and I agree with him.
I'm worried, like, because in Singapore is one of the things that that they celebrate here is the hawker food culture, which I've talked with in a previous episode, where like there's these kind of like food court areas that are like all the residential areas or close by enough to where it's a 5-10 minute walk, where the food is ridiculously cheap. You know, it's like $2-3 for a good meal, and it's very good food, and it's a lot. But it's mostly run by the older folks who are retiring or
Yeah, but would you say that you can get quality food, like nutritious food, things that, is actually good for your body, not overly processed?
When it comes to hawker food or just in general?
Well, I
Well,
mean, if hawker food is what most people eat, then yeah.
so before you get into that, Matt, because I want to expand on Andy's question here, is that when Andy was talking about quality food, we're not talking about the food that we put together with ingredients. I don't think. I think we're talking about the raw ingredients, right? Of getting, so the hawker food is cheap because of the source of the ingredients that they're getting to be able to deliver cheap food to you. So if you think about Singapore having a problem with housing in the future because there's going to be so many people, there are going to be so many people consuming food as well, raw materials. And I don't think they're getting that from Singapore, right? They're probably getting it from China. So back to what you were talking about, and Annie was talking about, is it quality food that these hawkers are actually putting out?
That's a good question. I probably can't answer that one.
If it's cheap, I'm willing to bet no, considering how much it costs to live in Singapore.
Yeah, the food here is definitely not as healthy as you would think. A lot of meat, a lot of rice and carbs, noodles.
And that's
they
what
use
concerns
pork
me,
lard.
because that's like that in Europe too, and it's becoming like this epidemic that people just aren't talking about enough.
Yeah, but obesity levels in Singapore is not high at all, from my understanding. At least I don't see it.
I don't know. I think
People are pretty healthy
I
here.
think you have to look at how the country defines obesity, but yeah.
Yeah, but there's a very active lifestyle here. Active
Let's see,
culture.
what is the obesity in Singapore?
Good question. But in general, like there's like the Singapore government really actively promotes fitness. Every other year they give everyone $100-$200 to just do whatever they want with when it comes to fitness. You have to spend it at certain areas, but like here's $100-$200. Go join a gym on us.
While you look up the obesity rate in Singapore, fat Asians are rare. We already know that, right? They hardly exist. So if our guests can't make it next week, what do you guys have planned? What do we got going on next week?
I'll take next week. I feel like you guys tag team this week. I'm thinking we'll probably either do a running episode or I have a new keyboard coming in tomorrow that I'm very excited about. It's the first time I dropped this amount of money on a keyboard. So I might do a small review on that. We can talk about computer accessories in general, and then kind of spend like 15, maybe 20 minutes on that before we move into a topic that actually requires more conversational skills.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool, especially with computer gear, man. My brother-in-law just built himself this new DDR5. I don't know what Intel's generation is at this point, and I got this old bastard in my room that's still kicking ass because I finally turned on the CPU cooler. After all these years. Did you find that obesity rate?
Yeah, it's roughly 14% if I'm adding it together.
That's interesting. I didn't think it'd be that high.
15%. 15%. I like how they did the number though. That was kind of funny. But yeah, they're roughly 15% overweight to obese.
All right, Matt, you got any last notes?
Not too much. Wish me luck when it comes to finding a job here.
Yeah. Good luck.
Maybe you should head over to that expat area sooner rather than later and shake some hands, get some COVID.
Yeah.
You should do it between this episode and next episode, man. That way you can kind of give us an introduction on that next week before Andy rolls in with his keyboard.
Yeah, I don't think so, but
all right, boys, it's been fun. We got anything else, Andy?
No, that's it. Y'all have